Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Have you ever wondered what people ate before there was fast food, before there were restaurants, before there were world-class five-star dishes, and even before there was fire? Where did humans learn their cooking methods? Listen to the whole story to find out. If you enjoy it, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more great stories. Chapter 1: The Genesis of the Hearth Fire. In the quietest dawns of human history, when the sun still hesitated behind distant mountain ranges, our ancestors had never known the concept of a meal as we understand it today. They lived off nature, gathering ripe tubers, leaves, and grains, and ended by chewing fiercely to crush their food right in their mouths. Each bite was an exploration, a first encounter with flavors never recorded in any written memory. Before there was a hearth fire, humans were merely bipedal apes with simple desires: fullness and safety. Fire, to them, was just a wondrous phenomenon, flashing in the darkness, capable of consuming entire forests, and terrifying even the bravest heart that tried to kindle it. Perhaps it began when a stray lightning bolt struck a dry tree trunk, and from the cracked bark, a tiny flame flickered. The first humans watched in amazement, then, with trepidation, crept closer. They realized that its heat could disperse mist and repel wild beasts. That radiant light ignited in their hearts a new belief: humanity could master the forces of nature. The earliest torches were made from dry branches, forest leaves, and chunks of resin. When lit, they produced smoke that stung the eyes and assaulted the nostrils, yet they also brought a fragile sense of security. Around the flickering fire, even unprocessed food was placed near the edge so that the warmth would soften the meat, making the hide tougher than its interior. Some noticed the optimal diameter of the embers for tenderizing hide. Others experimented by rotating clusters of liver, heart, and lean meat toward the fire's rim. They did not call it roasting. They were simply using heat to make food easier to chew, a bit sweeter, less gamey, less bitter. Time passed, and one generation passed on to the next, the secrets of observing fire. They learned to keep coals smoldering, to add small twigs to sustain the flame. One afternoon, a seasoned individual accidentally left a strip of game thigh too close to the glowing embers. Its edges blackened and emitted a sweet, enticing aroma. Descendants, curious, brought it to their noses and dared to taste. The rich, smoky flavor, mingled with melting meat on the tongue, etched itself into memory. It was the first time humans truly tasted the essence of roasted food. The word taste marked the beginning of an endless journey of discovery. They began to experiment, placing fragrant leaves atop meat, dipping it into stream water to temper the smoke, altering flavors by mixing in tart berries or fatty nuts. Each trial was a primordial symphony of tastes, carried out with nothing more than their hands and a smooth stone used as a pestle. In the dancing firelight, these first meals not only satiated hunger, but also became occasions for storytelling and sharing. They divided portions, exchanged experiences, and forged tight-knit communities. Years and centuries rolled by. Humans embraced new challenges: how to make food more delicious, more durable, and easier to preserve. They discovered that cooking in boiling water, a revolutionary breakthrough, made meat tender. dissolved nutrients without sacrificing flavor. At first, they boiled water in hollowed-out gourds filled with rainwater. Then they learned to carve a hollow log as a vessel, heating it by dropping in red-hot stones. The earliest cooking vessels, though crude, marked a turning point. Food no longer carried only the scent of smoke, but also absorbed the essence of water and herbs. Herbs were initially gathered not for culinary purposes, but for medicine. Only by cooking them with meat did people chance upon their pleasant aromas and bittersweet flavors. Each leaf, root, or tuber contributed a unique nuance. Some subdued gaminess, others stimulated the palate, still others deepened richness. Gradually, people began to cultivate plants, selecting the most flavorful varieties and planting them around their shelters. The first herb gardens, perhaps just a few basil bushes or clumps of chives, took root. In the dawn of human cuisine, everything was both simple and wondrous. A meal ceased to be mere sustenance and became a communal bond, spurring curiosity, experimentation, and creativity. In the earliest settlements, fires were lit along riverbanks. Men and women sat around them, sharing tales of the hunt, fears of wild beasts, and distant dreams. The aroma of roasted meat, the fragrance of wild herbs, the rich sweetness of bone broths, all blended into a first grand symphony, the primordial origin of every kitchen that followed. When night fell and only warm embers remained, they lay back to back, listening to one another's steady breathing. Stories of fire were not merely about food, but about humankind, discovery, and the yearning to conquer nature. In the silent darkness, embers drifted skyward like a sacred pact. Humanity would never cease to advance, from cooking food to crafting tools, and eventually to the dazzling civilization of opulent fine dining establishments. With images of thatched roofs, kitchen smoke rising in the morning sun, and those first people smiling by the hearth fire, they had no inkling that from their rough hands grasping the first roasted morsels, a glorious culinary civilization would emerge, carrying humanity from the era of raw consumption to the grandeur of five-star restaurants. And in the hush before dawn, only the wind whispered through the branches, murmuring, "There are still many stories waiting for us to tell." Under the clear afternoon sun, the circle of stones mottled with cold ashes lay still. Yet our ancestors' hearth lived on in their restless creativity. When humans first discovered how to fire clay, a great turning point opened up. The first crude clay pot was born, roughly shaped, but sufficient to hold water, stew bones, and cook all kinds of wild ingredients. Ceramics an invention born when artisans accidentally burned a mud bank in a flood, quickly became indispensable tools, allowing food to cook evenly, retaining flavor and nutrients. The very first clay vessel, formed by pressing two hands together around a wooden mold, then coating it with clay, sun-drying, and firing it in smoldering embers, stands as clear proof of the desire to master both fire and earth. People learned to control the simple kiln's temperature, partially cover the fire pit's mouth, wedge in dry branches, and watch the crackling sounds and the fire's red glow to know when the pottery had hardened. When the new clay pot was finally removed, still redolent of smoke, that was when crushed tuber, maize, or minced meat mixed with spring water and a pinch of herbs could be placed atop the fire. For the first time, food moved beyond mere embers to become a clay pot stew, delivering deep sweetness and a smooth, rich texture. The ancients quickly realized that each type of clay imparted a unique flavor. Red clay, when used for fish soup, blended the fish's natural sweetness with the earth's mineral notes to create a distinctive aftertaste. Fine black clay produced rice porridge that was stickier and more fragrant. Coarse sandy clay, used to bake bread from fermented maize dough, yielded loaves with crispy crusts and soft interiors. From this, pottery as a craft emerged. Riverside and lakeside villages sprouted workshops where artisans kneaded clay, shaped vessels, and carved simple motifs, horizontal and vertical lines symbolizing grain furrows, crescent shapes evoking the planting season. Alongside the invention of fired clay vessels, people gradually learned to work in teams during food preparation. Large hunting groups gave rise to culinary groups. The earliest roles of cook began to appear. One person mastered turning animal bones into broth, preparing the foundation for stews. Another specialized in selecting herbs, crushing them, and steeping them in water to create sauces. A third handled marinating meat in the tang of fermented berries. Division of labor by aptitude, seemingly simple at first, in fact laid the groundwork for the complex culinary cultures that would follow. Equally important was the discovery of fermentation, the transformation of food by microorganisms. When herb scraps, berries, or grains were buried underground or sealed in clay jars, natural yeasts from the air and the ingredient surfaces began to act. The result was the refreshing tartness of primitive yogurt, the heady rush of fruit wines, and the crisp bite of the first pickles. Through patient observation, our ancestors recognized that fermentation not only enhanced flavor, but also preserved food through harsh winters. Thus, yeast became an invisible ally, a secret behind the famed fermented dishes of later eras. Concurrently, charcoal grilling techniques advanced. The ancients learned to produce quality charcoal, cut wood, burn it in earth-covered pits to starve oxygen, then slowly introduce air. Charcoal burned with a stable, smoky heat and minimal flame. On such embers, the predecessors of meat skewers appeared, straight branches stripped of thorns, sharpened at one end, threaded through chunks of meat, and arranged around the fire pit. As dripping fat hissed on the coals, smoke infused the meat, creating an unforgettable aroma. In the process, people also learned to adjust the ratio of coarse to fine flour for bread making. Ground maize or millet, mixed with primitive fermenting water, became a sourdough-like batter, rolled thin, and cooked on hot stones or flat wooden slabs. The very first flatbread, golden and crisp, amazed all. From tubers and dried grains, humans had created a portable, shaped food. This was the first mobile meal, bread, demonstrating the ability to craft food with both form and soul. Finally, each community began to cultivate the habit of holding feasts or sacrificial banquets on special occasions. Abundant harvests, rites of passage, or post-hunt victories. These feasts were not only opportunities to savor delicacies, but also moments to affirm communal identity and give thanks to gods and nature. Tables overflowed with stews, grilled skewers, breads, fermented fruits, and mildly alcoholic drinks, a simple yet inventive grand feast. Laughter rang out, aromas drifted on the evening breeze, and kitchen smoke rose high, bridging earth and sky in a magical instant. From crude clay vessels to refined charcoal pits, from stewing techniques to the marvels of fermentation, these developments marked key advances in humanity's culinary journey. This is not merely a tale of food and tools, but of cooperation, the desire to conquer nature, and the care invested in every meal. When night fell and rain pattered softly, embers dwindled. People gazed up at the star-filled sky and whispered, "Tomorrow, what new discovery awaits us?" And thus, the journey from primal cuisine to the splendor of five-star restaurants began with clay pots, meat skewers, and warm bread. Yet the creative fire still smoldered, waiting for the next chapter to reignite the passion for eating. When humans shifted from foraging to cultivating rice, maize, millet, and sorghum, meals became more stable. But the craving for new flavors only grew. Meanwhile, along coastlines and riverside salt pans, people discovered a seemingly simple yet wondrous treasure: salt. The white crust that formed after seawater evaporated in salt ponds, the pure crystals glistening in the afternoon sun. This white gold became essential to elevating their cuisine. For the first time, salt was used primarily for preservation, curing fish, meat, and game to stave off spoilage. When the smoky flavors of fire were only fleeting, salt allowed food to last through harsh winters. So people no longer had to subsist on dry scraps, but could enjoy temperate salmon, venison, or wild pork even in freezing weather. By generously rubbing salt into the flesh and then drying it, meat tightened, its flavor intensified, and decay, causing bacteria, were suppressed. This simple method was humanity's first preservation secret, and one that raised cooking to a new level. Not long after, by observing the herbs growing along streams, our ancestors realized that, beyond salt, aromatic plants could enhance flavor. The first sprigs of rosemary, steeped in broth, lent a pungent, slightly bitter freshness. Sage leaves added an earthy note. Wild peppercorns produced a tongue-tingling heat. Forest mint brightened grilled meats, cutting through smoke's heaviness. Each harvest was dried in the shade, ground into powder, and mixed with salt to create future seasoning. Thanks to salt and herbs, eating became an act of enjoyment rather than mere sustenance. When a pot of barley soup steamed beside the stilt house, the first cook would sprinkle coarse salt and dried rosemary, stir gently, and watch the bubbles rise like a promise. The grain's bitterness balanced, its natural sweetness exalted. The sizzle as grains absorbed salt, the scent of herbs unfurling, every sense awakened. Meanwhile, fermentation art continued to improve. From the earliest pickled vegetables came pickled pears, apples, and tomatoes. From salted, fermented grains arose the first sourdough bread, with its characteristic tang and airy crumb unlike flatbreads. Each batch of pickles was a maker's secret, depending on temperature, humidity, salt-to-water ratio, and flour type. This complexity sowed the seeds of rich culinary traditions. Each region prided itself on its own pickles and sourdough, bearing the breath of its land. Alongside salt, fermenting agents became indispensable spices. Wild yeasts combined with sugar from cane molasses, treacle, or wild honey produced warm, heady jars of fermented drink. This wine was not only for drinking, but also for cleaning pottery, sterilizing, and even enriching stews, tenderizing meat and deepening flavor. In some spiritual rites, people sprinkled wine over food as a purifying ritual to bring good fortune. The first trading vessels on rivers and then across seas exchanged not only weapons and jewels, but also salt, herbs, pepper, ginger, and cinnamon. These goods became luxuries and sparked long-distance trade. Camel caravans crossing deserts bore sacks of white salt, speckled peppercorns, and fragrant cinnamon. Coastal merchants bartered fabrics, pottery, and precious woods for spices. From then on, cuisine intertwined with commerce, cultural exchange, and geopolitics. Whoever controlled the trade routes set the continent's flavors. At night, riverside campfires flickered, and stretched out hides dried, redolent of salt, herbs, and fermenting vapor. Merchants' calls, camel footsteps across sand, and peasants gathering last dry leaves blended into a chorus of early flavors. Thus was born a melody of salt and spice, the elements that deepen every cuisine. From the secrets of white salt deposits and hidden forest herbs to the long journeys of spice ships, humanity expanded its palate and laid the foundation for the dazzling culinary tapestry we continue to explore in later chapters. In the stillness of night, only the wind carried salt and pungent warmth, urging us onward into the next culinary mysteries. Chapter 2. From shifting cultivation to fields, the emergence of agriculture. When the wild seeds first took root on the fertile riverbank soils, the history of humanity's cuisine entered a new chapter. No longer relying on sporadic hunting and gathering, people began to congregate into settled communities, reclaim fields, and sow rice, maize, millet, wheat, and more, generating abundant food supplies. The verdant fields under the morning sun became sacred ground, where every grain and nut embodied the sweat and aspirations of an entire tribe. Around 10,000 BC, in the valleys of the Nile, Euphrates, and Tigris rivers, a vibrant excitement spread through the villages. Inhabitants skillfully transitioned from foraging to sowing. They observed birds laying eggs in wild grain fields, then domesticated that grain in gardens, gradually eliminating hollow kernels and retaining only the plump ones. Thus, our ancestors domesticated cereals, their primary food source, and founded the first agricultural systems in history. Fieldwork demanded coordinated effort. When harvest season arrived, entire clans gathered by the golden paddy fields, using stone sickles to reap the grain and pile it up for drying. The full ears of rice that scattered across the courtyard promised a season free from hunger. Elders sat by the drying beds, threshing rice in bamboo baskets, winnowing away the chaff, and then pounding the rough grains with stone mortars into coarse flour, the forerunner of later wheat flour. To utilize the abundant grain, the ancients invented the first ovens, rectangular clay chambers built with rudimentary fired bricks, were sealed except for a small opening to add coals and insert dough skewers. The heat-resistant clay interior ensured even cooking, yielding golden, crispy crusts and soft, pliable crumb. The very first loaves, called flatbreads, quickly became the staple food of settled peoples. Bread not only satisfied hunger, but was also easy to store, whether buried in earthen pits or hung from wooden racks in stilt houses. Alongside bread, the great river civilizations advanced milling and fermentation techniques. In Mesopotamia, beer emerged from naturally fermented wheat dough, creating a nourishing, refreshing drink for villagers. The beer of that era was diluted and mild, but spread by word of mouth as a calorie-large brew to replenish energy after hard labor. In ancient Egypt, bread and beer symbolized wealth. The dead were even buried with jars of beer and bags of bread, believing that their souls would still require sustenance in the afterlife. Beyond cereals, humans began domesticating livestock. Wild goats, pigs, and fowl were kept in wooden pens, providing milk, meat, and eggs. Herdsmen learned to manage grazing routes and control feed to optimize the quality of meat and dairy. Goat's milk was boiled to skim off foam, then fermented in clay jars. Thanks to natural cultures, the milk transformed into cheese, a protein and fat-rich food that was easily stored and transported. During harvest feasts, tables groaned under baked grains, loaves of bread, slow-cooked wheat porridge, wild vegetable stews, sweet tart cheeses, and bowls of cool beer. Laughter echoed across the fields, and the scent of freshly baked dough wafted on the evening breeze, filling everyone with pride in their labor's fruits. Children darted among haystacks, picking up stray grains and popping them into their mouths. Elders leaned against palm trees, recounting myths of the grain goddess, the deity who bestowed bountiful harvests. With agriculture came refined preservation techniques. Flour was stored in underground pits to stay cool. Milled wheat was salted and divided into small sacks. Cheeses were hung in well-ventilated storage rooms to mature and develop protective rinds. Every minor innovation helped minimize waste and ensured the community's security during lean seasons. Endless emerald fields by day, rows of banana trees lining earthen paths, kitchen smoke curling skyward from thatched roof huts nestled among paddies. Thus, humans ceased being wandering foragers in search of food and became farmers bound to the land, to the seasons, and to the very flatbread redolent of fermentation, a symbol of prosperity and stability. This was a pivotal turning point, ushering in an era of wheat-based cuisine, beer and bread, cheese, and plentiful harvest feasts across the green fields. When agriculture blossomed along the banks of the great rivers, the Nile, Tigris, Euphrates, and Yellow River humanity began to come ashore, erecting cities, palaces, and temples. Cuisine no longer remained the humble fare of rural folk, but became an expression of power and aesthetic taste for mighty dynasties. In the Egyptian Delta, the royal court debated endlessly over which wheat variety was superior. In Mesopotamia, rulers used fermented grain dough to brew a rich, potent beer reserved exclusively for the nobility. On the Yellow River's banks, the Joe King commanded expeditions to seek out rare herbs, importing them as spices for grand banquets. The water palace and the glazed ceramic bowl. Under the Hyksos and late Egyptian dynasties, potters invented a white glaze coating that gave ceramics a luminous sheen like morning mist. The very first glazed bowl, roughly the size of a palm, was used to hold sauces made from honey, lemon juice, and dried herbs. When placed atop a polished granite table and struck by sunlight, its surface would shimmer a jade-green hue, reminiscent of the reflected waters of the lake of life behind the palace. Each Egyptian noble feast typically comprised 4 courses: an appetizer of wild greens tossed with honey vinegar dressing, the centerpiece of a smoking, herb-marinated turkey, followed by a porridge of wheat stewed with goat's milk and honey, and concluded with dried fruits soaked in honey, roasted lentils, and sesame seeds. The dishes were presented on thin golden trays set on stone tables, surrounded by columns carved with images of Osiris and Isis, symbolizing the union of food and spirit, royal palaces, and the art of presentation. In Mesopotamia, the capital Babylon, famed for its hanging gardens, was also renowned for its courtly desserts, round wheat cakes brushed generously with honey, millet pastries spiced with cinnamon and ginger, and cooling green wheat puddings for summer days. These sweets were served on engraved bronze platters depicting warriors, mythical beasts, and foliage, marrying gustatory pleasure with visual art. Presentation thus became its own art form. A chef had to balance color, aroma, and texture. A plate of sour fish stew in an Assyrian palace, for instance, would be garnished with fresh mint leaves, vivid red chili slices, and a scattering of black peppercorns atop the broth. Guests did not merely taste their meal. They admired its arrangement as if viewing a miniature painting. Molasses, grape wine, and the symphony of beverages. During the same period, in the Mediterranean, the Phoenicians and Greeks refined winemaking to an art. Red wine was aged in terracotta jars, lined with lime to neutralize toxins, then slowly settled in cool underground cellars. When poured, it gleamed a deep ruby and exuded the heady scent of fermentation, with faint notes of oak from barrel aging. To temper its potency, the Greeks customarily mixed it with cold spring water in precise ratios, an early precursor to the modern cocktail. On the Arabian Peninsula, sugarcane molasses, brown gold, was concentrated from cane juice, then simmered with ginger, turmeric, and cloves to create a syrup base for puddings, breads, and dipping sauces. Thick and viscous, rich in natural sugars, it intensified flavors and extended shelf life. The cartographic feast and the foreign spice trade. The spring festival at Persepolis in the Persian Empire epitomized ancient culinary globalization. Delegations from Greece, Egypt, India, and Arabia arrived bearing exotic spices. Vivid turmeric, fiery Indian sassafras, sweet-scented star anise, and curry powders. Persian court chefs expertly blended them into a saffron-braised beef stew, a delicate fusion of nutmeg, cinnamon, ginger, and saffron that captivated the entire court. At the banquet table stood large earthenware jars holding infusions of orange blossoms, mint leaves, and honey, alternating with jugs of grape wine and fermented apple cider, small bowls of turmeric syrup, and platters of sugar-coated cashew confections. Silk carpets woven with merchant caravan maps reminded guests of the long journeys that brought these flavors together. The Chef's Chronicle. While royalty and aristocrats sparred over the most prized spices and finest yeasts, commoners continued planting fields, raising pigs and poultry, and tending fish ponds. Yet between city and countryside, skilled cooks kept an ear to evolving tastes. They inscribed recipes on clay tablets, passed techniques down through generations, and forged a class of culinary artisans, not of royal blood, but granted special respect. From those ancient tablets, we can today recreate the flavors of bygone courts. Tangy spiced fish, wheat and lamb soup, slow braised to tenderness, honey glazed egg pastries with dried fruits, and rose infused goat's milk desserts steeped in premium honey. Each dish bears the imprint of a dynasty, a trade route, and a story steeped in sweat and tears. As the sunset turned Lake Persepolis crimson, palace hearth smoke drifted on the evening breeze, carrying the aroma of roasting meats, the heady perfume of wine, and the sweetness of molasses. It was the apogee of ancient gastronomy, where nobles discussed politics and destiny, and culinary artisans performed silent, intricate rituals before their creations were laid upon the table. When agriculture flourished along the great rivers, the Nile, Tigris, Euphrates, and Yellow River, humanity began to come ashore, building cities, palaces, and temples. Cuisine no longer remained the simple fare of rural folk, but became an expression of power and aesthetic taste for mighty dynasties. In Egypt's delta, the royal court meticulously debated which wheat variety was finest. In Mesopotamia, rulers brewed a dense, rich beer from fermented grain dough exclusively for the nobility. On the Yellow River's banks, the Joe King dispatched expeditions to procure rare herbs, imported as spices for grand banquets. The water palace and the glazed ceramic bowl. Under the Hyksos and late Egyptian dynasties, potters invented a white glaze coating that gave ceramics a radiant sheen like morning mist. The very first glazed bowl, roughly palm-sized, held sauces made from honey, lemon juice, and dried herbs. When placed on a polished granite table and struck by sunlight, its surface would shimmer jade green, recalling the waters of the lake of life behind the palace. Each Egyptian noble feast comprised 4 courses: an appetizer of wild greens tossed with a honey vinegar dressing, a centerpiece of smoked herb-marinated turkey, a porridge of wheat stewed in goat's milk and honey, and a finale of dried fruit steeped in honey, roasted lentils, and sesame seeds. Dishes were served on thin gold trays set upon stone tables, surrounded by columns carved with Osiris and Isis, symbolizing the union of food and spirit, royal palaces, and the art of presentation. In Mesopotamia, the capital Babylon, famed for its hanging gardens, was also renowned for courtly desserts: round wheat cakes, lavishly glazed with honey, millet pastries, spiced with cinnamon and ginger, and cooling green wheat puddings for summer days. These sweets sat atop engraved bronze platters depicting warriors, mythical beasts, and foliage, marrying gustatory pleasure with visual art. Presentation became its own art form. Chefs balanced color, aroma, and texture. A plate of sour fish stew in an Assyrian palace might be garnished with fresh mint leaves, deep red chili slices, and scattered black peppercorns across the broth. Guests not only savored flavors, but admired the arrangement as if viewing a miniature painting. Molasses, grape wine, and the symphony of beverages. At the same time, in the Mediterranean, the Phoenicians and Greeks perfected winemaking. Red wine was aged in terracotta jars lined with lime to neutralize toxins, then slowly settled in cool cellars. When poured, it gleamed deep ruby and exuded the heady scent of fermentation, with faint oak notes from barrel aging. To temper its potency, Greeks customarily diluted it with cold spring water in precise ratios, an early precursor to the modern cocktail. On the Arabian Peninsula, sugarcane molasses, brown gold, was concentrated from cane juice, then simmered with ginger, turmeric, and cloves to create a syrup base for puddings, breads, and sauces. Thick and viscous, rich in natural sugars, it intensified flavors and extended shelf life, the cartographic feast, and the foreign spice trade. Persepolis' spring festival in the Persian Empire epitomized ancient culinary globalization. Delegations from Greece, Egypt, India, and Arabia arrived bearing exotic spices, golden turmeric, fiery Indian sassafras, sweet star anise, and curry powders. Persian court chefs expertly blended them into a saffron-braised beef stew, a delicate fusion of nutmeg, cinnamon, ginger, and saffron that captivated the entire court. At the banquet table stood large earthenware jars of orange mint honey infusions, alternating with jugs of grape wine and fermented apple cider, bowls of turmeric syrup, and platters of sugar-coated cashew confections. Silk carpets woven with merchant caravan maps reminded guests of the long journeys behind each flavor. Guilds of cooks and the publication of recipes. In Paris, London, and Bruges, cook guilds were formed, imposing strict rules on ingredient provenance, preparation techniques, and presentation. Apprenticeships covered everything from selecting and slaughtering poultry to mastering fermentation and fire control before a cook could serve at court. Each guild produced a livre des recettes, a woodblock printed recipe book with limited copies to safeguard trade secrets. England's form of query, 1390, commissioned by King Richard II, contained hundreds of recipes, from sops in broth, bread soaked in stock, to sauce meure, dried grape sauce spiced and served as dessert. In Florence, the Medici owned the manuscript Libro de Arte Coquinaria, 1465, recording methods for torta di noci, walnut cake, torta di riso, rice cake, and walnut-infused wines for ancestral commemorations, streets, and common folk eateries. While the aristocracy dined in refinement, urban workers created vibrant street food. Inns by the markets sold meat pies, minced pork with pepper and onions to hurried laborers. London street vendors offered pottage, a hot soup of vegetables, grains, and bone broth for travelers, and thick trenchers' loaves the size of boards served as edible plates, then soaked in meat gravy and fed to stray fowl. Hostelries in Normandy, Lyon, and Munich began serving herb-spiced sausages, minced pork, seasoned with salt, dill, caraway, and sweet paprika stuffed into casings. Smoking these sausages made them ideal for hunts or picnics, combining portability with rich flavor. Gateways to the future. The 15th century closed with caravels crossing the Atlantic, bringing New World chilies and squashes to Europe. Potatoes, tomatoes, and cacao would soon transform global cuisine. Yet in this moment, medieval gastronomy, with its cook guilds, woodblock recipe books, royal banquets, and street corner fare, had laid a firm foundation for cultural fusion and boundless creativity. Under a starlit European sky, smoke from monastery kitchens and taverns mingled on the breeze. The next chapter would usher in the Age of Discovery, as Europeans ventured to the Americas and distant Asia, returning with unknown ingredients, from fiery chilies and sweet cacao to delicate vanilla poised to write the next glorious stanza in the history of food. Chapter 3. New Seeds. The Age of Atlantic Exploration. When the sailor Cristoforo Colombo first steered the caravel La Niña into Guanahani Bay on the morning of October 12th, 1492. He could not have imagined that his voyage to find a route to India would open an entirely new epoch for humanity's cuisine. On board, in addition to sacks of pepper, cloves, cinnamon, and precious ginger, the sea breeze carried the strange air of lands never before found on European charts. The western sky blushed pink, and beneath the brilliant dawn light, the crew witnessed, for the first time, tall corn stalks casting shadows on white sands and plump tassels swaying in the breeze. Discovering maize, tomatoes, and chili peppers maize, the grain that had nourished Native Americans for millennia appeared like a miracle. Stalks nearly as tall as a man bore large, plump kernels encased in bright yellow or pearly white husks, unlike any wheat ear the Europeans knew. When the sailors tasted it by chance, they were astonished by its sweet, slightly nutty flavor. Many believed it a new evolution of grains. Flatbreads made from ground maize precursors to tortillas were soft and pliant, carrying the pristine taste of vast prairie fields. Tomatoes called pomodoro, the sun's golden apple in Italy for their bright yellow blooms and green immature fruits, also stunned Europe. The glossy red, juicy fruits seemed simple, but when halved, their tangy sweet juices burst forth, leaving a delicate aroma. King Ferdinand II's court chefs quickly commissioned jars of pickled tomatoes, confits, then pureed them into sauces that beautified and enriched toasted bread in surprising ways. And chili peppers, the native hot spice, revolutionized the palate. Tiny, plump pods packed an adventurous heat that both frightened and fascinated Europeans. They soon realized that chilies did more than flavor dishes. Dried and powdered, they preserved meats and fish, brightened stews, and lent warmth to the body through cold winters. Over time, chilies were ground into fine powder, mixed with salt and European pepper, creating a new four-spice blend for every kitchen. Potatoes, squash, and cacao. Potatoes, those round, soil-stained tubers sprouting among the reeds of the Andes, became Europe's savior during famines. The first settlers grew potatoes spas in monastery gardens, harvesting enough to eat year-round. Their natural sweetness, soft texture when boiled, and lasting satiety made potatoes a beloved staple across the continent. New World squashes and gourds also enriched Europe's vegetables. Pumpkin flesh, simmered into soup with milk and butter, became a warm, creamy pumpkin pottage when seasoned with European herbs. Dried gourds were woven into temporary vessels, indirectly inspiring potters to craft vases and soup bowls. Cacao, once a royal luxury of the Maya and Aztecs, swiftly became a premium beverage. Roasted cacao beans, when ground and mixed with water, chili, and vanilla bean, produced chocolatl, a bitter, thick drink with a piquant bite. Europeans, tasting it for the first time, were captivated by its warming, exhilarating effect. By the 17th century, West Indian cane sugar arrived in Europe, allowing beverages to be sweetened and leading to the creation of the first solid chocolate bars. Culinary crossroads. Bringing New World ingredients back to Europe was only the beginning. As Spanish, Portuguese, and English traders ventured to India, Southeast Asia, and Africa, they imported Ceylon cinnamon bark, Java ginger, Banda nutmeg, and Mexican vanilla. Each spice was combined with local produce in novel ways. maize sautéed with chopped nutmeg, tomatoes roasted with Thai turmeric, potatoes mashed with ginger powder. In Amsterdam, bowls of stampot, mashed potatoes with kale, began to be dusted with imported chili flakes. In London, the old pottage was now spiced with tingling Sichuan peppercorns. In Lisbon, chefs crushed Brazilian cashews into thick sauces for grilled fish. European kitchens were no longer limited to Mediterranean herbs or African spices, but became a crossroads of flavors where anything could converge. From home kitchens to grand feasts, despite the flood of new spices and ingredients, everyday fare for commoners still centered on bread, porridge, and soups. Yet at grand celebrations, weddings, investitures, church feasts, noble banquets, dazzled with chili mayo-stuffed galantines, cocoa pumpkin tarts, and warm chocolate punches. These feasts testified to the power of trade. The French sipped Pomerol wine alongside corn cakes, while the English sampled cocoa punch made with rum. As night fell over Seville's harbor, lantern lights shimmered on merchant ships, and the busy footsteps of sailors and traders blended into a single rhythm. The scent of roasted maize, the tang of tomatoes, the fiery warmth of chilies, and the sweet aroma of cacao mingled in the air, heralding a wholly new culinary era, one of boundless creativity and fusion. The caravel sliced through waves, carrying unprecedented treasures of flavor. A world once blank on maps was now etched with spice routes and seed trails, laying the foundation for future global buffets. 4-season menus, and 5-star dining experiences. We will follow Vasco da Gama's path to India next and uncover the drama of Asian flavors from Ceylon curries to Japanese miso soups. When the Portuguese sailor Vasco da Gama finally rounded the Cape of Good Hope in the summer of 1498, entering the Indian Ocean and docking at Calicut, the most prosperous port city on India's west coast, he and his crew were stunned by the spectacle of the spice market. Bubbling pots of curry, trays piled high with basmati rice, glinting like scattered jewels, stacks of wafer-thin plat bakri breads, and dozens of spices displayed on deep blue silk mats. Ceylon curry and golden turmeric. Curry, the soul of South Asian cuisine, was prepared from a blend of ground cumin seeds, black peppercorns, premium turmeric powder, fresh ginger, and dried garlic. Locals used a large cast iron skillet called a kadai to dry roast the spice mix until fragrant, then blended it with coconut milk and tangy tamarind water, stewing it with chicken or river salmon. The sizzling hiss when coconut milk droplets met hot oil created a silky emulsion, marrying fiery heat with gentle sweetness. A spectacle that left Vasco da Gama in awe. He immediately sent a small sample back to Lisbon, and the Portuguese royal kitchens promptly ordered tens of tons of turmeric, cane sugar, and Ceylon cinnamon. At market stalls, long salt-rubbed sugarcane stalks, peeled meticulously, shone like golden crystals. The cane was boiled down over low flame into jaggery, a dry, honey-like sugar. Vasco da Gama and his merchants soon realized jaggery could replace refined sugar and also thicken curry sauces and the batter for dokla. Meanwhile, Ceylon cinnamon, with its thin, rosy bark, stood apart from the coarse, double-thick cassia cinnamon used in the Middle East. A gentle twist of a Ceylon quill released a faint floral aroma of wild cinnamon. Portuguese chefs carefully recorded a royal masala recipe, half Ceylon cinnamon, a quarter cloves, and a quarter green peppercorns reserved exclusively for the king's and viceroy's feasts. Culinary convergence. After these Indian spices reached Europe, European cooks began to experiment, sprinkling curry powder into chicken soup, adding jaggery to grape sauces, and marinating venison with Ceylon cinnamon. At the same time, visiting Indian merchants brought sesame oil, crude soy paste, and early miso powder evidence of Asian-European exchange. In coastal courts of Europe, curry stew became beloved by Algarve nobles, while Sephardi Jews in Porto crafted chicken falafel scented with cloves and turmeric. Franciscan monasteries even hosted fundraising feasts featuring curry bread, garlic butter loaves, slathered with thick curry sauce and sprinkled with roasted lentil crumbs. Seafood and tropical fruits. Beyond dry spices, Calicut was famed for its fresh seafood, sardines, herrings, dried prawns. Portuguese sailors learned to salt pickle fish with curry powder and coconut vinegar, creating a piquant pickled fish that later influenced curry-preserved fish dishes in Mozambique and Brazil colonial culinary legacies. Tropical fruits like jackfruit, papaya, and mango were sun-dried or brined with curry and jaggery. Chewy, spice-infused mango strips became a sweet charcuterie enjoyed by nobles. Venturing into Arabia and East Africa, Vasco da Gama did more than introduce Indian flavors to Europe. He paved the way for Arab culinary culture in Mombasa and Menya. On Portuguese ships, flatbreads were Portugalized into flatbread do indico, cooked on iron griddles and dipped in miso curry paste, a fusion of Eastern and Western traditions. As night fell over Calicut's harbor, campfire flames flickered, and smoke infused with turmeric, garlic, ginger, and pepper rose to the clanging of ship bells, inviting vessels in. At that crossroads of time and taste, ancient, medieval, and early modern cuisines intertwined, laying the foundation for a new era of globalized flavor. On the giant wooden ship of the Dutch East India Company, VOC, sailors who had just opened their eyes after the midday nap heard the clicking of the compass gears and lively footsteps on deck. The billowing sails glided over the waves, tracing silver arcs across the deep blue sea. They were making for the Maluku Islands, legendary across Europe as the birthplace of cloves and nutmeg. Under the slowly falling sunset, the ships interwove like white silk ribbons, promising a treasure trove of flavors unmatched anywhere. When they landed at Banda Bassar, the sailors were greeted by the heady scent of red earth and forest blooms. Smiling locals guided them into the village by small boats painted in bands of red and yellow, adorned with images of the Cendrawasih bird emblem of this land. At the market cave's entrance lay heaps of fresh cloves, stems still green, their clusters trembling in the breeze, exuding a potent, smoky spice. A single nutmeg kernel in the hand was many times larger than a black peppercorn, its smooth, ebony shell radiating warm, citrus cinnamon notes. The first experiment took place right on deck. The VOC's head cook ignited a glowing coal, placed a few cloves upon it, and inhaled the anti-inflammatory, cozy aroma. He snapped a nutmeg in half, crushed it gently between his fingers, and tasted the sweet heat blending earth and sky. The sailors' admiring glances told the story. With just one small spice kernel, any European bechamel sauce could metamorphose into a startling Banda curry sauce. The VOC set up a spice depot right on the quay, hiring villagers to spread cloves on bamboo racks to dry in the sun before packing them into the ship's hold. On returning to Europe, they delivered thousands of sacks of cloves to the lords of Amsterdam at a price lower than pine wood, and the spice swiftly became folk fare at both humble taverns and noble banquets. Thanks to their monopoly, clove prices in Europe dropped by 30% within a year, prompting cooks and diners alike to experiment. From apple-braised pork ribs and creamy pumpkin soup to baked milk puddings encased in dried clove shells. Nutmeg, the queen of spices, was even more miraculous. The VOC discovered that steeping nutmeg in strong spirits, brandy, for 30 days transformed the liquor into a crystal-clear amber elixir, its aroma a refined blend of vanilla, cinnamon, and pepper. This elixir banda was served in crystal goblets at banquets of The Hague's wealthiest families, becoming a symbol of elegance and luxury. Moreover, the VOC found wild vanilla on Timor Island. Climbing vines clung to cultivated trees. Vanilla blossoms opened in the rainforest shade before falling to the ground. Locals gathered the pods and fermented them naturally in banana leaves, producing glossy black vanilla sticks whose sweet fragrance endured for months. When Europe discovered vanilla, they quickly crafted crème à la vanille, a delicate, fragrant custard that laid the groundwork for future gelato production. But the spice quest was not only about flavors. The VOC erected forts, built warehouses, and asserted authority on the island, leading to conflicts with the indigenous population. Moluccan drums thundered amid gun smoke, transforming Banda Besar's harbor into chaos. Yet through strife, both sides learned. Locals refused to sell cloves to the Dutch without fair payment in sandcloth, a luxurious lacquered fabric originating in Asia, while the VOC agreed to train Maluku youth as potters, enabling them to produce fine white porcelain jars to keep cloves dry and mold-free. When night blanketed the coconut groves by the shore, scattered campfires glowed in leaf huts, and the smoke of cloves, nutmeg, and vanilla mingled, a final musical chord before closing the glorious chapter of the spice voyage. The Dutch East India Company, with its green-hulled merchant ships flying the VOC flag, had brought the world into Europe's kitchens, inaugurating an era of multi-flavored feasts, endless recipe books, and truly global cuisine. The sound of lapping waves and flickering lanterns then carry us to the dawn of the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution, when European kitchens would undergo a technical renaissance, from cast iron ranges to the first pressure cookers, promising to continue the story of the history of foods in the chapters ahead. Chapter 4. From coffeehouses to public restaurants. When the 18th century dawned under the light of the Enlightenment, European cuisine entered a profound transformation. No longer confined to royal courts or private kitchens, dining began to break free of the household and emerge as a public activity. Coffee houses, tea shops, and then restaurants, where each table became a miniature banquet hall, where scholars, merchants, and civil servants gathered to discuss politics and savor food, sprang up across great metropolises like Paris, London, Vienna, and Stockholm. The aroma of coffee from Constantinople to London by the mid-17th century, coffee, a bitter yet seductive drink, had spread through Europe with Mediterranean traders from Istanbul. In Paris, The very first café, Le Procope, opened in 1686, became the haunt of Voltaire, Rousseau, and Diderot, who debated philosophy over steaming espressos. The gray haze of roasting green beans mingled with the sweetness of sugar and warm milk to create an intoxicating allure. In London, the first coffee house opened in 1652 on St. Michael's Alley, where patrons sat in heated rooms sipping black coffee while the proprietor weighed each spoonful on reed scales and iron weights. The cafe quickly became an underground office for merchants. Wheat prices, lending rates, ships arriving from India, all news was broken over a cup of coffee. Soon every member of the intellectual elite made at least one pilgrimage to load up on smiles and gather information. Tea shops and the culture of tea drinking. Shortly thereafter, from the ports of Bristol and Plymouth, tea milder, gently astringent, perfumed with jasmine, entered English aristocratic households. The first tea shops appeared in London in the 1660s, offering not only tea, but also ginger biscuits, jam-topped scones, and clotted cream. Within velvet-upholstered rooms, furnished with lacquered wood tables, fine porcelain teacups were hand-painted with cherry blossoms, butterflies, and delicate gold signatures. Alongside Japanese green tea, wagashi exquisite traditional sweets arrived by VOC ships, inaugurating the first East-West tea and pastry cultural exchange. The birth of the restaurant, boulanger and the soup provider. Alongside the flourishing cafe and tea shop scene, a new culinary movement took root in Paris, the idea of the public restaurant. In 1765, bakery owner Antoine Boulanger opened the first establishment called Restaurant on Rue des Poulies. He created a restorative soup. He called it restaurant to restore strength, made from chicken broth, herbs, and a splash of white wine, served with hot bread. Before long, Boulanger's restaurant name became renowned. Scholars queued to taste his convalescent soup, and the menu expanded to seared beef tenderloin, herb-steamed tilapia, and vanilla puddings. Most notably, Boulanger introduced the printed menu, allowing diners to choose dishes rather than waiting for whatever the chef served, a pioneering step toward the a la carte modern restaurant. The intelligentsia and the community dining room. As the Enlightenment spread, intellectuals and the bourgeoisie flocked to coffeehouses and restaurants, not merely to eat, but to use them as community dining rooms for political, scientific, and artistic debate. In late 18th century Vienna, Demel and Konditorei Central became meeting places for Beethoven, Freud, and Goethe. Alongside espresso and tea, they ordered apple strudel, soccer tort, and rum-infused cream pastries. Kitchen transformation, from hearth to professional brigade. Before the 18th century, court and private kitchens were damp, poorly ventilated, and undivided. To serve cafes and restaurants, chefs began dividing their kitchens into distinct sections: hot prep, salle chaude; cold prep, salle froide; pastry, pâtisserie; and dishwashing, plonge. In 1651, François-Pierre La Varenne, a court chef from Burgundy, published Le Cuisinier François, regarded as the foundational manual for professionals. He systematized over 200 recipes, from demi-glace sauces to foie gras pâté, laying the groundwork for French cuisine, one of Western gastronomy's pillars. Approaching the 19th century, mechanized flavors and the Industrial Revolution. With the late 18th century Industrial Revolution, kitchen equipment became mechanized. Early pressure cookers, cast iron stoves with adjustable fire valves, coal-fired ovens, and hydrothermal sterilization emerged. Restaurants could now maintain stable heat, mass-produce soups and stews, and preserve ingredients systematically. Against a backdrop of factory smokestacks and turning gears, mobile food stalls appeared at train stations and print shops, serving workers quick meals of cold-cut sandwiches, stew with potatoes, and iced tea. The clientele now included not just nobility and clerks, but urban laborers, students, and busy merchants, laying the foundation for the five-star era. Gradually, the infrastructure of cafes, tea rooms, and restaurants was completed by faster transport, steamships, refrigeration, ice boxes, and canning techniques. By the early 19th century, Haussmann-style eateries lined Paris's Champs-Élysées, complete with cooling rooms, private dining salons, cigar lounges, and crimson velvet drapes. These innovations formed the ideal basis for the rise of five-star restaurants' venues, offering not just cuisine, but the full art of dining and social interaction. As night fell over the rooftops of Paris and London and gaslights flickered, the clink of glass echoed through historic cafes, community dining halls, and the earliest restaurants. From here, our story leads into the magnificent 19th century, with the appearance of legendary chefs, from Escoffier to Delmonico, and the culinary art of the modern age entering its golden chapter. When the 19th century began to recede into the past, and the great smoke plumes of the Industrial Revolution hung over Europe's avenues, cuisine entered an unprecedented golden age. Private chefs, once the silent servants behind royal and public restaurant kitchens, now rose to stardom, their names forever linked to signature styles, refined techniques, and legendary recipes. Auguste Escoffier, the king of chefs. Born in 1846 in Nice, Auguste Escoffier began his career in the modest back kitchen of Le Petit Moulin, before being summoned to London's royal kitchens under King Edward VII. He found the industrial kitchens of the day in utter disarray, overcrowded brigades working chaotically, dishes prepared one by one, leaving diners waiting. From 1890 onward, Escoffier perfected the brigade system, dividing the kitchen into specialized stations: sauce chef, fish chef, pastry chef, etc., each responsible for a single element, creating a closed, efficient workflow. This model laid the foundation for every modern restaurant kitchen. Escoffier also collected and refined classics demi-glace, béarnaise, hollandaise, and published Le Guide Culinaire, the Bible of French cookery, with over 5,000 recipes and rules. He simplified elaborate courtly formulas so they could be applied in everyday restaurants while preserving their essence. Dishes like filet de sole meunière, bouchée à la reine, and pêche melba became icons of haute cuisine. Delmonico's, chefs as stars in the New World. Meanwhile, in New York, Italian immigrants Charles and Pietro Delmonico opened a modest eatery called Delmonico's in 1837, catering to America's wealthy elite. Head chef Charles Delmonico elevated the menu with lobster Newburg, lobster in beurre blanc, Washington pie, vanilla custard tart, and the famed Delmonico steak, beef sirloin flambéed in cognac. Delmonico's was the first American restaurant to publish a full-color menu, categorizing appetizers, entrees, desserts, and listing prices transparently. Patrons could order à la carte in European fashion and sip imported French champagne. Charles Delmonico thus transformed American cuisine, previously dominated by roast beef and pudding, into a canvas for continental sophistication. The birth of cookery schools and food publications. With professional demand rising, the first culinary school opened in Paris in 1879, Le Cordon Bleu. Its inaugural class of nearly 100 students, both men and women, learned everything from knife skills to plating to coordinating a brigade. In London, Leith's School of Food and Wine began in 1890, adding wine and mixology courses, forging chefs with dual expertise in food and drink. At the same time, culinary journals like La Revue Culinaire in France and The Cooks, Illustrated in America, began regular publication, sharing recipes, renowned chef interviews, equipment reviews, and emerging taste trends. This transparency democratized professional knowledge and inspired thousands of young cooks worldwide. The arrival of the Michelin Guide. In 1900, brothers André and Edouard Michelin, owners of a French tire factory, published the free guide Michelin for motorists, listing eateries, repair shops, and filling stations. Initially just 35 pages, it soon expanded to include hotels and restaurants. After World War I, as travel rebounded, the guide became independent, sending anonymous inspectors to dine and score establishments on strict criteria: ingredient quality, cooking technique, flavor, creativity, and consistency. The first Michelin star appeared in 1926 to denote a quality establishment. In 1931, it evolved into the famed three-star system, a very good restaurant in its category. Excellent cooking, worth a detour. Exceptional cuisine, worth a special journey. Thereafter, chefs competed not only in style, but also in pursuit of Michelin's unparalleled prestige. Banquets, mobile kitchens, and global diversity. Concurrently, transportation advances, high-speed trains, streetcars, and private automobiles gave rise to mobile catering alongside popular tour travel. In America, Julia Child published Mastering the Art of French Cooking, 1961, bringing Escoffier's techniques into home kitchens. In Britain, Elizabeth David championed Mediterranean cuisine with a Book of Mediterranean Food, 1950, sparking an olive oil, pasta, and salad revolution. Regional specialties from Cantonese dim sum, Valencian paella, and Edo-style sushi to South American empanadas began to appear in major cities. Casual eateries mixed with fine dining establishments let patrons travel the world without leaving the city center. Excellence and the future. As dusk fell over Paris's electric lights, named for Louis Lumière, the echo of chopping knives in Escoffier's old kitchens lingered in the air. Successive generations of chefs built upon the legacy of brigades, a la carte menus, Michelin stars, and culinary schools to push creativity further. Molecular gastronomy, farm-to-table, and locavore movements, and beyond. In that splendid fusion of 19th and 20th century grandeur and warmth, we see how Antoine Boulanger's restorative soup, the brilliance of Escoffier and Delmonico's, the influence of Michelin, and formal culinary education coalesced to make public dining a multi-billion-dollar industry, setting the stage for the chapters of the culinary future yet to be told. When the kitchen smoke of the late 20th century finally cleared, global cuisine appeared to have reached saturation chicken in demi-glace, exquisitely plated sashimi, premium steaks paired with fine wines. Yet just when there seemed nothing left to discover, chefs and culinary researchers ushered in a fresh breeze. From France's Nouvelle Cuisine movement to the molecular gastronomy revolution, then farm to table, fusion, and sustainable eating in the 21st century. Nouvelle Cuisine and breaking classical rules. In the 1970s, French chefs Paul Bocuse, Michel Guérard, and Roger Verger launched Nouvelle Cuisine to rebel against Escoffier's elaborate, heavy buttered style. They instead focused on the freshest ingredients, rapid cooking, and pure flavors. Dishes were served on wide plates with minimal sauce, bright colors, and restrained garnish. Rather than an overloaded tableau, each plate became a sleek sculpture inspired by modern architecture. The molecular gastronomy revolution, building on minimalism, by the late 1980s, Spanish chef Ferran Adrià El Bulli and British chef Heston Blumenthal, the Fat Duck, ignited the molecular gastronomy movement. They applied science to cooking, liquid nitrogen for instant ice cream, agar-agar to turn fruit juices into caviar, lecithin to create delicate flavored foams. Dishes like floating dumplings, tomato bubbles, and smoking sorbets astonished diners, expanding our notion of what food could be, from mere sustenance to an extraordinary sensory experience. Farm to table and celebrating locality. At the same time in America, farm-to-table pioneers such as Alice Waters, Chez Panisse, and Dan Barber, Blue Hill, placed farmers center stage, sourcing ingredients daily from nearby farms. Restaurant kitchens became open studios where guests could watch vegetables harvested that morning being skillfully dressed into salads. Farm-to-table championed unfussy, chemical-free cooking without long-distance transport or ostentation, respecting the ingredient's true taste. Fusion cultural crossroads on the plate. The 21st century has seen a powerful blending of culinary cultures. In Los Angeles, Chef Roy Choi's Kogi BBQ trucks fuse Korean kimchi, American-style barbecue pork, Mexican tortillas, and Japanese pickled ginger. In London, Gordon Ramsay's Bread Street Kitchen serves steak with Indian curry sauce and dim sum buns. Fusion goes beyond mixing spices. It tells stories of history and identity through food. Sustainable cuisine and smart plant-based dining. Amid climate change and environmental crises, sustainable cuisine and plant-based menus have surged. Chefs like Massimo Bottura, Osteria Francescana, minimize waste-making stock from vegetable scraps, recycling stale bread into fish cakes, while companies like Impossible Foods and Beyond Meat craft plant proteins, mirroring meat's taste and texture, winning over both carnivores and vegetarians. Technology and the kitchen of tomorrow. Technology continues shaping food's future. 3D printed foods in novel shapes. Sensors measuring seafood freshness. AI recipe generators tailored to taste and nutrition. Robot bartenders. Automated cookers producing rice and soups at the touch of a button. On-demand delivery apps. Uber Eats, GrabFood, turn street food into instantaneous mobile restaurants. The diners as creative partners. Unlike the era when Escoffier reigned supreme, 21st century diners actively co-create, sharing dishes on social media, rating and commenting directly to chefs. Reservation platforms like OpenTable and Risi provide crowdsourced reviews and rankings rivaling Michelin stars. Kitchen stars on YouTube and TikTok empower anyone to master their own home kitchen, fueling a global foodie phenomenon. Diversity and harmony. Ultimately, 21st century cuisine is an ongoing dialogue among cultures. Mexican street tacos meet Korean kimchi, Japanese sushi merges with Caribbean ramen, Vietnamese banh mi mingles with Western-style pho. Chefs celebrate diversity and unity by hosting street food festivals and pop-up restaurants across all continents. Eating is not just nourishment, but a way to understand and connect people worldwide. As LED lights shimmer in high-tech kitchens, smart appliances hum alongside automatic coffee roasters and temperature-monitored freezers, the story that began with Antoine Boulanger's first cafe, through nouvelle cuisine, molecular gastronomy, farm-to-table, and fusion, continues to be written by chefs and by every diner, every table, and every shared story that enriches humanity's kitchen. Chapter 5. The Industrial Food Revolution. When the 19th century gave way to the 20th, the waves of the Industrial Revolution not only reshaped cityscapes with factory chimneys and iron rails, but overturned how humanity produced, preserved, and consumed food. Landmark inventions, from canning to the electric refrigerator, ushered in the era of industrial food, transforming the everyday meal from something prepared fresh at home into a global supply chain ready to deliver to every household. Canning, a new preservation process. In 1810, French chef Nicolas Appert astonished the world by unveiling the invention of canning after years of trials heating and sealing food in glass jars. His idea was to use high temperatures to destroy bacteria, then seal the lid to keep out air. When Napoleon's soldiers enjoyed vegetables, soups, and meat from cans right in the trenches, Appert was hailed as the father of modern preservation. Building on his success, the British developed sturdy, lightweight tin cans that would not shatter, allowing canned foods from peas and corn to sardines to spread across the empire. Electric refrigerators and the chilled supply chain. By the late 19th century, artificial refrigeration mechanisms were adapted to manufacture freezers and cold storage warehouses. In 1913, the first electric refrigerator for American homes debuted, replacing the use of harvested ice blocks. Perishables, fresh milk, pork, seafood no longer had to be consumed in a single day. They could now keep for weeks or months. The first self-service refrigerated grocery store opened in New York in 1929, letting homemakers select everything from imported produce and sterilized milk to long-lasting pastries without fear of spoilage. Pre-mixed flours and instant seasonings. Simultaneously, flour milling and spice processing became mechanized. Roller mills replaced stone mills, producing fine white flour, free of coarse bran, and boosting output dramatically. In 1930, General Mills launched Betty Crocker's Bisquick, a premixed pancake, frying, and biscuit flour that required only water or milk. In Britain, instant soup cubes, concentrated broth blocks, appeared as early as 1908, making industrial meals even more convenient. Refined sugar and sweetened foods. The refining processes for cane and beet sugars became standardized, yielding cheap, pure white sugar. By mid-20th century, sugar-saturated packaged foods, sodas, cookies, gummy candies, and breakfast cereals. A generation of children grew up on artificial sweetness, sugar-coated grains, and fruit-flavored yogurts. Fast food, the rise of quick eats culture. White Castle's first hamburger stand opened in Springfield, Missouri in 1921, and McDonald's pioneered the assembly line cook and order taker model in 1948, sparking the fast food revolution. A minimalist menu, hamburgers, fries, soft drinks standardized every step, slicing potatoes, seasoning patties, frying buns, and mixing sodas. Fast food became not only a speedy choice, but an icon of American pop culture, spreading worldwide with tens of thousands of outlets. Convenience foods. The 1950s and 60s marked the heyday of convenience foods. TV dinners, frozen meal trays of chicken, mashed potatoes, and peas first appeared in 1953, ideal for weekend family movie nights. Japan introduced instant ramen in 1958, providing a hot, tasty pork and mushroom soup in under 3 minutes with just boiling water. Global supermarkets and consumer brands. By the late 20th century, big box supermarkets like Walmart, Carrefour, and Tesco became every family's go-to destination. Aisles stretched from fresh produce and frozen goods to canned items, sweets, and spices. FMCG giants Nestlé, Unilever, Kraft Foods dominated through global marketing campaigns, turning every soda bottle, cereal box, or chocolate bar into a symbol of modern consumer culture. Toward a modern food ethos. The Industrial Food Revolution brought unprecedented convenience, but also challenges for nutrition and health. As we now enter the sustainable era, nutritionists and chefs will strive to balance convenience with natural value. Balancing convenience and nature will explore organic, non-GMO movements and how new technologies like 3D printing of plant-based foods are continuing to write the history of what we eat. When the industrial food vessel sailed through the first half of the 20th century, its conveniences, canned goods, frozen meals, ready-to-eat products lining every supermarket became taken for granted. Yet alongside these benefits, growing criticism arose over health consequences, environmental impact, and a loss of connection to food origins. Between the poles of convenience and nature, the movement for balance emerged, laying the groundwork for organic farming, clean produce, and the revival of traditional cultivation methods. The rise of organic farms. By the 1960s and 70s, many Western countries, especially the US, UK, and parts of Northern Europe, saw the growth of organic agriculture. The first organic farms eschewed synthetic pesticides and chemical fertilizers, instead practicing crop rotation to maintain soil fertility. Chefs like Alice Waters in Berkeley, California, opened Chez Panisse, 1971, with a pledge to source only from local organic growers. This not only transformed American food thinking, but turbocharged the farm-to-table concept, driving soaring demand for organic products. Certified clean produce. To protect consumers, international bodies and governments introduced organic certification standards. In Europe, the EU Organic Label launched in 1991. In the US, the National Organic Program, NOP, took effect in 2002. Certified organic fruits and vegetables must meet strict rules: zero pesticide residues, non-GMO seeds, and land free from chemical treatments for at least 3 years. Bunches of purple kale, dew-kissed spinach bags, and baskets of vibrant cherry tomatoes became emblems of clean eating, convenient yet naturally pure foods. Convenience and nature converged in healthy convenience products. whole grain snacks, chia quinoa energy bars studded with dried fruit, live culture, unpasteurized yogurts, frozen vegetable soups made from all natural ingredients, and ready-to-cook durum wheat pastas produced by traditional methods. Rather than compromise flavor for speed, brands invested in freeze-drying and vacuum packing to preserve nutrients and authentic taste. Specialty organic supermarkets and farmers markets. From the late 1990s into the early 21st century, chains like Whole Foods Market, US, and Planet Organic, UK, Jarsama, and Alnatura, Germany, opened stores devoted solely to organic and natural products. Meanwhile, urban farmers markets blossomed. Stalls piled with local produce, fresh-made cheeses, pasture-raised meats, jams, and honey sold directly by regional farmers. Seeing the grower clutching baskets of greens and chatting with customers restored trust and reconnected diners to food sources, healthy snacking, and nutritional transparency. As personal nutrition awareness rose, smartphone apps tracked calories, protein, fiber, and vitamin intake under good manufacturing practice, GMP, guidelines. Restaurant menus began listing calorie counts, macronutrient breakdowns, and ingredient origins. The snacking trend evolved into healthy snacking, roasted almonds, seaweed crisps, sugar-free oatmeal cookies. Industry reformulated products to reduce salt, sugar, and saturated fats while adding fiber and superfoods like spirulina and maki berry powder. Smart agriculture technologies. To balance safety with productivity, natural farming embraced technology. Moisture sensors, automated drip irrigation, drones monitoring pests, and blockchain for supply chain transparency. Dutch organic growers use full-spectrum LED lighting to optimize lettuce growth. Japanese strawberry farms deploy soilless hydroponics to ensure consistency and food safety. Technology ceased to be an adversary and instead became a key ally of sustainable agriculture. Food waste reduction initiatives. With roughly one-third of all food produced going to waste, initiatives like Europe's Too Good to Go and America's Flash Food connect restaurants and supermarkets with consumers to sell near-expiration meals at discounts. The Too Good to Go app offers magic bags of fresh-made dishes, surplus breads, and salads, cutting landfill waste while delivering affordable food to those in need. A harmonious future of convenience and nature. Having navigated the saturation point of fast food, processed convenience foods, and organic farming, the food industry now pursues deep harmony. Ready-to-eat products made from clean ingredients. Energy-efficient distribution. Eco-friendly packaging. Zero-waste restaurants. Brands like Chipotle proclaim food with integrity, pledging to use local, organic ingredients with no trans fats. Vietnamese clay pot rice restaurants revive traditional coconut rice cooking. Concept grocers like Flying Tiger display compostable plant-based bags. Between the shores of convenience and nature, 21st century diners need not choose sides. A vacuum-packed salad box still tastes of just harvested greens. Artisan noodles cook in 3 minutes with hot water. An upgraded organic frozen pizza bakes in a home oven. Each satisfying the criteria of tasty, quick, and wholesome. As humanity crossed into the new millennium, we moved beyond simply balancing convenience with nature to ask deeper questions about resource consumption and ecosystems. Against the backdrop of climate change and environmental crisis, two prominent trends, plant-based meat and the zero-waste ethos, have sketched a greener future for global cuisine. The plant-based meat revolution, driven by the need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and spare forests from livestock grazing. Startups like Impossible Foods and Beyond Meat have engineered plant proteins, soy, pea, brown rice, with biotechnology to mimic real meat structure and flavor. Heme technology. Impossible Foods taps the heme molecule from soy-like hemoglobin to recreate red meat's characteristic umami. When seared on charcoal or in a skillet, the plant burger smokes and bleeds fat exactly like beef. Textured protein fibers. Beyond Meat extrudes concentrated plant proteins into fibrous strands, then seasons them to match the springiness of chicken or pork. Vegan burgers, sausages, and deli slices now fill supermarket shelves and fine dining menus. Thanks to these innovations, plant-based burgers, hot dogs, and steaks appeal not only to vegetarians, but also to traditional meat lovers. Top chefs are integrating meat alternatives into haute cuisine, serving pea protein steaks with wild mushroom consommates or crafting sashimi from thinly sliced radish set in alginate gel. Zero waste, not a scrap left behind. The zero waste movement has flourished in pioneering kitchens like Silo, UK, and Noma, Denmark. They practice upcycling scraps. Vegetable peels, spent leaves, and bones are composted for mushroom cultivation or transformed into intensely flavored broths. Rotating seasonal menus. Weekly changing menus, aligned with seasonal harvests, minimize inventory and spoilage. Eco-friendly packaging. Single-use plastics are eliminated in favor of compostable bags or reusable glass jars. At the bar, bartenders turn fruit pulp into natural syrups, using citrus peels as infused garnishes. In the kitchen, chefs repurpose plant-based dishwater into recycled salads made with cabbage trimmings. Every step, from sourcing to service, aims for not a morsel wasted. Reviving tradition through fermentation. Concurrently, chefs are harnessing natural fermentation to bridge modern innovation and heritage. Kimchi, sauerkraut, and kvass. Lactic fermentation not only preserves, but also enriches with probiotics. Tokyo fusion restaurants serve matcha-infused kimchi. Berlin craft beer halls have revived kvass, fermented wheat drink, for discerning palates. Miso, tempeh, and natto. Japanese and Indonesian staples are reimagined. An Indonesian chef smokes tempeh over coals. New York fine dining houses incorporate white miso into truffle-infused cream sauces. Fermentation has become a nexus for health, cultural identity, and culinary creativity. Home kitchens and Michelin-starred restaurants alike are experimenting with pickled vegetables in glass jars, kombucha on tap, and house-made sourdough. Direct-to-consumer farming, DTC. Bypassing traditional distribution, many farms now sell directly to consumers via DTC models. Seasonal produce boxes. Subscribers receive boxes of just harvested fruits and vegetables on a regular schedule. Community-supported agriculture, CSA. Members prepay for the season's costs and in return receive weekly shares of produce, eggs, and honey. Online marketplaces. Apps let growers list produce directly, with customer reviews guiding harvest schedules and quantities. This model cuts out middlemen, reduces waste, and boosts transparency about food origins. Green technology in home and industrial kitchens, technology extends beyond organic fields into kitchen appliances. Humidity sensing ovens that auto-adjust heat to lock in vegetables' natural sweetness. AI-driven nut milk machines that craft plant milks to your preferred texture at the touch of a button. Harvest robots on high-tech farms accelerate picking and minimize spoilage. 3D printed foods are tested by NASA and in cutting-edge restaurants, producing protein-rich breads for seniors. Thanks to these innovations, the home kitchen has become an eco-friendly flavor lab, while industrial processes move toward net zero carbon footprints. Community foodways and education. The ethos of clean eating and smart consumption spreads through. Green cooking classes in schools and community centers, workshops on fermenting vinegar, kimchi, and plant-based cheeses, food-sharing networks apps like Komai, Japan, and Olio, UK Salsoi, connect neighbors to exchange near-expired groceries. Culinary culture now embodies cooperation, sharing, and a collective sense of responsibility toward a sustainable future. In the mid-21st century, as the world faces food insecurity and climate upheaval, the history of foods will continue to evolve toward next-gen proteins, fruit flies, seaweed, and fungal mycelium, e.g. corn, as sustainable protein sources. Vertical farming, urban greenhouses, and mobile container farms bringing fresh produce to city centers. Foodscaping, integrating native plants, wild herbs, and community gardens into public spaces. Circular supply chains, closed-loop systems from farm to table to compost, regenerating soil and minimizing impact. Between the poles of convenience and nature, 21st century diners no longer must choose. They can savor the best of both worlds. A vacuum-packed salad retains the vibrancy of morning harvest. Artisan noodles cook in 3 minutes with boiling water. An organic frozen pizza crisps in a home oven. All meeting the triad of delicious, fast, and wholesome. Chapter 6. The Sweetness of History and the Journey of Refined Sugar. Since ancient times, salt could be likened to white gold for preserving food. Sugar, with its enchanting sweetness, became the orange gold that transformed human tastes. Initially, sugar was a luxury of Eastern royal courts, extracted from sugarcane by daily artisanal boiling. Its pure sweetness astonished first consumers, who revered golden, fragrant sugar as a wonder that healed all wounds and provided miraculous energy. Around the 7th century, Buddhism carried cane cultivation and sugar concentrating techniques along the Silk Road into China and India, where monasteries used sugar to steep medicinal herbs and bake offerings. By the 10th century, refining methods reached the Middle East, where Arab chemists invented crystallization processes yielding pure, white sugar-fine, jewel-like crystals. They incorporated sugar into sweet soups, fermented fruit wines, and stews spiced with nutmeg and cinnamon, adding a gentle sweetness to Mediterranean cuisine and winning over even traditionally salt-heavy diets. As merchant vessels plied the Mediterranean and crossed the eastern seas, sugar became a prized commodity on par with spices. In medieval Europe, only royalty and the church could use sugar at feasts. Marzipan cakes, nut-filled pastries, and sweetened teas symbolized authority. Banquets in Babylon, Florence, and London shimmered with white powdered sugar dusted on apple tarts, frozen puddings, and crystallized sugar confections. Beginning in the 15th century, sugar colonies in Madeira, the Azores, and later Brazil and the Caribbean established vast plantations worked by thousands of enslaved laborers sending sugar back to Europe. The horrific legacy of slavery and mass migration forced ruling powers to confront the link between the sweetness of sugar and human tragedy. Yet driven by desire, sugar grew cheaper, spreading from monarchs to the middle class and laborers, becoming indispensable in every kitchen. By the late 18th century, the mechanical revolution transformed sugar production. Continuous cane presses replaced manual mills. Charcoal filtration systems purified the molasses, and automated crystallizers produced internationally standardized white sugar. Raw red sugar seeded ground to refined sugar, offering a mild sweetness, free of bitter undertones. During the Industrial Revolution, sugar was mass packaged in iron factories, shipped in tin cans and crafty paper sacks, and sold in London and New York's grocery stores and markets. The modern homemaker no longer needed days of cane harvesting and lengthy boiling. Just open the bag, measure a spoonful, and sweeten soups, congees, and quick loaves. Sugar's ubiquity altered eating habits. Dessert became a mandatory course. Cakes and candies became gifts. European and American children grew up snacking on sugar treats. 19th century Swiss innovators like Nestlé invented milk chocolate by separating cream from fresh milk, then blending it with cocoa and sugar into a smooth, brittle bar. The British perfected flavored boiled sweets. Americans created sugar-dusted donuts and ultra-sweet cupcakes. The French introduced pastel-hued macarons in diverse flavors. However, as sweetness spread unchecked, health problems emerged. Tooth decay, obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. By mid-20th century, nutritionists and public health experts warned of excessive sugar consumption. Sugar reduction campaigns began. Brands offered low-sugar versions and artificial sweeteners like aspartame and saccharin, followed by the plant-derived stevia, providing calorie-free sweetness. Consumers started scrutinizing added sugars on nutrition labels, seeking no added sugar, low sugar, or natural sweetener products. Amid this, the smart sweet trend emerged, using premium pure honey instead of refined sugar, experimenting with xylitol and erythritol from eucalyptus wood, crafting syrups from grapefruit peels. Pastry chefs created floral sugars, sugar blended with rose or jasmine essences, or revived traditional rock sugar in lotus seed and mung bean sweet soups. Simultaneously, the sourdough bread movement spread, highlighting the gentle sweetness of naturally fermented starches, offering subtler sweetness and beneficial probiotics. The 21st century closes this chapter on sugar trends, but opens a new one on designing sustainable sweetness, using biotechnology to convert complex carbohydrates into natural sugars via enzyme methods, developing fermentative microorganisms that produce functional food sweeteners, engineering drought-tolerant, high-yield sugarcane varieties requiring no pesticides, confronting climate change, water scarcity, and carbon reduction imperatives. The sugar industry is moving toward organic cultivation, reduced water usage, and solar-powered refining processes. In a remote corner of Ethiopia's highlands, the people of Kifa have for generations harvested bright red coffee cherries, chewing the beans inside and marveling at their lingering bitter sweetness. Legend tells that in the 9th century, a goat herd named Caldi discovered his herd brimming with energy after grazing on coffee leaves and fruit. Monks then brewed coffee leaves with goat skins to create a drink that kept them awake through all-night prayers. Via Arab traders, coffee spread to Yemen, where Sufi ascetics used it to sustain their midnight devotions. In Mocha, roasted beans were traded across the Mediterranean, becoming a black gold on par with sugar and spices. That early coffee delivered an intense, smoky bitterness and woody aroma, quite unlike modern brews. Wild Arabica beans, only lightly roasted to a reddish brown, brewed in copper ibriks and filtered through cloth. Its rival, however, was tea, an even older beverage, originating in China's Qin dynasty, 3rd century BC. The gentle bitterness of young tea leaves, pan-fried and steeped in hot water, offered a refreshing clarity. Shaolin monks used tea to banish fatigue, inspiring its reputation as the sacred leaf of the literati. By the late 16th century, Portuguese, Dutch, and English traders had imported the first tea chests to Europe, igniting a tea craze. London boasted tea rooms throughout Mayfair. Britain's tea mania led Parliament to levy heavy taxes and fueled the Boston Tea Party of 1773. Assam and Darjeeling black teas became status symbols, while Japan's matcha green tea was embraced by samurai in Chinoyu ceremonies, celebrating calm and focus. Beneath their bitter notes, coffee and tea share caffeine, a stimulant that heightens concentration and uplifts the spirit. In 17th and 18th century Europe, philosophical coffee houses became the discreet meeting rooms of merchants, politicians, and artists who gathered news, exchanged ideas, and propelled social movements. In Paris, Mozart's mournful symphonies mingled with whispers at Café de la Régence, the favored haunt of Louis XV's chess masters. Beyond coffee and tea, peoples around the globe discovered other bitter brews. Pure Maya cacao, rich kola nut from West Africa, robust yerba mate in South America, and Amazonian guarana. Each region developed its own ritual. Fermented pu'er tea in Yunnan, strong Vietnamese drip coffee, Italian espresso, thick Turkish coffee, and New York's latte art cappuccinos in hip cafes. Yet not everyone adores pure bitterness. Sweeteners, sugar, milk, honey, or spices have tamed these stimulants into more pleasing experiences. Foam-capped cappuccinos, vanilla-kissed lattes, caramel macchiatos, and bubble teas from temperate climes. From rose-infused oolong to piping hot drinking chocolate, the world has transformed bitter into sweet, spawning countless variations. Yet the mystery of that first cup remains undiminished. Today, whether we down a dawn espresso at our screens or gather around a pot of artichoke leaf tea, the journey from wild coffee cherries and meditative tea leaves endures. The mystery of bitterness still awakens our senses, stirs creative energy, and links past to present each cup of coffee, each mug of tea, a stanza in the grand epic of culinary history. From the earliest days, when people gathered around campfires and soaked grains in water, only to forget to stir, natural yeasts gave birth to the first crude beer. Gentle bubbles signaled their first taste of intoxication. Over centuries, fermentation was refined into the ancient beers of Babylon and Mesopotamia. The Egyptians brewed festival ales from wheat and barley to honor Osiris. The Sumerians inscribed recipes on clay tablets, passing down a lightly sweet, licorice-tinged, bready beer. When Phoenician traders entered the Mediterranean, they brought with them primitive winemaking from wild grapes, laying the foundation for Greek and Roman viticulture, from amphorae buried underground to the sacred ceramics of Dionysian temples. In the Middle Ages, European monasteries preserved the art of brewing. Elegant Bordeaux and Burgundian wines, and Belgian abbey ales, each drop bearing the monk's hand. Wine featured in the Eucharist, while beer became a nourishing, safer alternative to contaminated water for villagers. By the 16th century, distillation advanced in Arabia and Italy. Spirits first made from grapes, then from barley and potatoes, gave rise to brandy, whiskey, and vodka, the fiery souls of northern lands. The 17th century cognac and Armagnac revolutions in France. In France, Scotland's perfected Highland and Islay whiskey distillations, and the British India gin and tonic tradition all painted a rich map of fermented spirits. Bordeaux classified its greatest wines under the 1855 Cru Classé system. Dom Perignon's monks in Champagne harnessed bubbles into the very emblem of celebration. In the early 20th century, America's Prohibition, 1920 to 1933, outlawed alcohol, but could not quell humanity's thirst for fermentation. Instead, speakeasies thrived and cocktails shaken martinis, Sazeracs, Manhattans, Old Fashions were born, elevating mixed drinks to a high art combining spirits, sugar, bitters, and water. As the modern world advanced, the late 20th century craft beer movement exploded. Thousands of microbreweries across the US and Europe experimented with hop-heavy IPAs, coffee-rich stouts, and chocolate-infused porters. Artisanal distillers revived oak barrel aging, peated malts, and heritage grain styles. Today, after that morning espresso or a bubble tea break, we still crave a glass of red wine, a warming bourbon, or a tropical tiki cocktail. Each sip, a link between past and present, where fermentation is not just chemistry, but the very soul of culture, carrying forward our shared desire for communion and the joyful pulse around the table. Chapter 7. Rice, Wet Paddy Fields, and Riverine Civilizations. From the steppe terraces of southern China's hillside to the sunlit plains of the Mekong Delta, the grain of rice has become the very lifeblood of billions. Originating in the Yangtze River Basin over 9,000 years ago, wild rice ears were domesticated by hand. During the pre-Qin era, women painstakingly hulled, soaked, and dried the grains, then transplanted young seedlings into small, embanked plots. Their rudimentary tools, a sharpened bamboo stick, a stone hoe, and willow bark baskets, were guided by skillful hands and keen eyes, transforming wild wetlands into vast emerald carpets. Before plows and irrigation canals, wet rice farming depended entirely on monsoon rains and tidal flows. Ancient farmers devised alternating flooded paddies and raised bunds to retain water, rotating seedlings and blocking tides to create integrated rice-fish ecosystems that sustained entire communities. Each harvest gathered the village together, the swish of sickles blending with laughter, the scent of dry straw, and the aroma of freshly steamed glutinous rice. Pure white grains were more than food, offerings to ancestors. Dragon Boat Festival and Ulambana celebrations across Southeast Asia feature ban chung, vivid red zoigak, and floating rice ball desserts, testaments to the sacred bond between people and harvest. Following Arab traders, India's sturdy short grain rice swept into the Middle East, marrying saffron, turmeric, and lamb in the legendary biryani. Thailand's fragrant jasmine rice and Himalayan basmati graced upscale tables in Paris and London. The Mekong, Irrawaddy, and Chao Phraya rivers became commercial arteries, their grain-laden boats supplying whole regions. Meanwhile, the Japanese infused rice with art. Sushi, each vinegar-seasoned kernel, seasoned with rice vinegar, sugar, and salt, then wrapped around fresh salmon or crisp seaweed-captured refined palates worldwide. The rice ethos of Ichigo Ichi, one time, one encounter, reminds diners to cherish every grain and every steaming hand-formed ball. In the early 20th century, mechanization and high-yield hybrids sparked Asia's green revolution. IR-8 rice in the Philippines, a miracle grain, vanquished mass famine among the poor. Yet this boom brought environmental challenges. Chemical fertilizers and pesticides depleted soils, demanding sustainable agronomic wisdom. Today, drones hover to monitor crop health, moisture sensors, and automated drip systems optimize water use. Yet farmers still practice age-old wet-dry rotations, compost straw into green manure, and select drought-resistant local varieties, preserving each region's rice heritage. From the fragrant, supple com tom of the Mekong to the misty violet soy nep cam of northern Vietnam and the pearl porridge of Singapore, these dishes are more than meals. They are living histories of land and people, of rice that has carried humanity beyond hunger and connected hearts across the world. As we entered the modern era, science and mechanization gave rice a wholly new shape. Stone rollers replaced hand-operated mills to polish grains into gleaming white kernels. Threshing wheels supplanted wooden pestles to boost productivity, and parboiling, soaking, and steaming the paddy before milling locked nutrients from the bran into the grain, yielding both white rice and a vitamin-rich golden rice critical for wartime food security. Meanwhile, glutinous rice was ground into flour for Japanese mochi, Korean teok, and southern Vietnam's banh cot. Rice flour also became the basis for noodles bun, pho, mien, and giant shrimp chips in industrial factories. At the same time, rice fermentation spawned countless traditional beverages, from Niigata's pure sake, warm with koji culture and aged in cedar vats, to Cambodian Samai rice wine, India's toddy rice beer, and Vietnam's Central Highlands rice jar roux can each steaming cup, invoking the aroma of ripened fields. In America's West, Asian immigrants introduced rice lager, a light, easy-drinking beer. In Brazil, arroz com cachaça, sugarcane spirit mixed with rice, emerged at carnival celebrations, symbolizing cultural fusion. The 20th century witnessed the instant rice revolution. Pre-cooked rice, vacuum-dried under high pressure, and packaged for quick reheating in 2 minutes boiling water. Concurrently, the whole grain movement gained traction, making brown rice with its intact bran fiber and healthy oils the choice of health-conscious consumers. Dishes like sesame salt brown rice, organic brown rice salads, and diabetic-friendly brown rice cookies demonstrated that rice had evolved from mere sustenance into a nutritional therapy. Today, blockchain technology can trace every grain from field to table, Organic rice regions like France's Camargue and Japan's Banshu blend agritourism with harvest festivals, inviting visitors to transplant seedlings, reap rice, and taste family recipes right in the paddy. As dusk falls and the wind ripples through the stalks, the steam rising from a fresh bowl of rice reminds us that rice's journey is more than a food story. It is the odyssey of river civilizations, of tireless labor, and the pursuit of abundance, connecting past, present, and future, grain by grain. Rural life is becoming ever more modern as robotic harvesters, combine harvesters, and drones that spray organic fertilizer replace human labor. Yet rice still holds its core values of nature and culture. On the foundation of digital transformation, smart rice has emerged with soil moisture sensors, pest forecasting algorithms, and automated irrigation systems. Data streams to farmers' smartphones to optimize yields and minimize waste. Each grain of rice is now an agricultural IoT product. From sowing to packaging, every step is logged on a blockchain ledger, ensuring transparency for consumers worldwide. Meanwhile, biotechnology labs are developing drought and salt-tolerant genetically edited rice varieties, enriched with micronutrients and antioxidants, promising solutions to hunger in a changing climate. Salt-tolerant strains for the Mekong Delta or drought-resistant rice for Africa's Sahel are no longer distant dreams. At the same time, future food trends are taking rice into space and under the sea. NASA is testing freeze-dried rice for astronauts, preserving its texture and aroma, while ocean farms hybridize rice with seaweed to produce high-protein, omega-3 rich foods that relieve pressure on fisheries. In Singapore's ports, robot fish rice, synthetic sashimi-style rice intrigues diners, and in Amsterdam, an underwater restaurant serves sushi made with rice, grown alongside aquaculture in transparent seabed tanks, creating a truly subaquatic dining experience. Global rice culture continues to diversify as migrants carry their traditional grains along migration routes. Italian risotto becomes comfort food in New York. Valencian paella appears in Melbourne. Malaysian nasi lemak is reimagined with Italian sesame oil and French truffle in high-end fusion kitchens. Each grain of rice carries more than starch. It embodies family memories, religious festivals, and the flavors of home. In a world on the move, a bowl of rice remains an anchor. Whether there is bread, pasta, or cornmeal, people still yearn for a warm clump of rice, its natural sweetness, and the faint tang of fermented leftovers. Sunset over the paddy fields, golden light merging with the sky, reminding us that however advanced technology becomes, rice remains humanity's wise grain, nourishing our bodies, connecting us to one another, and conveying hope for a sustainably prosperous future. Chapter 8: The Trail of Healthy Drinks. From animal milks to a plant-based world. From the earliest days, humans have sought not only abundant nutrition from meats and grains, but also refreshing, nourishing beverages to quench thirst, boost energy, and bind communities. After the age-old journey of fermented brews, wines, coffee, and tea, ushered in an era of bitter stimulants, the 20th and 21st centuries have witnessed a quieter yet powerful revolution, transforming the beverage world with milks. moving from traditional animal dairies to a vast array of plant-based, functional, collagen-fortified, and probiotic options. 1. Animal milks, a global journey. Goat's milk, buffalo's milk, cow's milk. Once symbols of pastoral well-being. In Eurasian highlands, goat and sheep milks were cultured into chèvre and thick, velvety yogurts. In South Asia, water buffalo milk rich and creamy became paneer cheese and mango herb lasais. In the Middle East, early morning goat's milk fermented into labneh, a silky sour cream, enjoyed with pita and olives. By the late 19th century, pasteurization allowed urban markets in New York, Paris, and Tokyo to receive safe, pathogen-free cow's milk from centralized farms. Fresh milk, sterilized milk, powdered milk, and infant formulas filled supermarket shelves, making cow's milk the nation's beverage. Brands such as Carnation, Nestle, Fage, and Danone introduced live culture probiotic yogurts, promoting digestion and immunity. 2. Discovering the plant milk universe. Faced with population growth and environmental concerns, lactose intolerance, cholesterol, methane from cattle, and waterland pressures, animal dairy confronted major challenges. In the heart of the 21st century, a multitude of plant-based milks emerged, turning modern life into a flavor expedition. Soy milk. Dating back to ancient China, soaked and ground soybeans yield an ivory milk with natural sweetness. Fermented into natto and miso in Japan and Korea, today, soy milk provides high-quality protein, low fat, and zero lactose. Almond milk. Overnight soaked almonds are blended and strained into a subtly sweet, nutty milk ideal for summer drinks, lattes, and smoothies. Oat milk. Boiled oats filtered of solids produce a silky, beta-glucan-rich milk that helps lower cholesterol with a gentle sweetness perfectly suited to coffee and puddings. Rice milk. Cooked rice pureed and strained into a clear, clean-tasting milk low in protein, but ideal when paired with other plant proteins. Coconut milk. Pressed coconut flesh yields a highly fatty, fragrant milk used in curries, tom yum soups, and cooling refresher drinks. Cashew and macadamia milks. Premium nut milks boasting mild creaminess and heart-healthy monounsaturated fats for fine dessert pairings. 3. Functional milks. Collagen, vitamins, and probiotics. As health awareness rises, the milk category has splintered into myriad functional lines. Collagen-fortified milks, marine or avian collagen dissolved in cow's or soy milk to support skin elasticity, joints, and nails. Omega-3 milks, enriched with flaxseed or fermented fish oils for balanced fatty acids and heart health. Vitamin D and B12 milks, targeted for sun-deprived or vegan consumers. Probiotic milks, packed with live lactobacillus and bifidobacterium strains in chilled packaging, promoting gut health and easing digestion. Startups such as Oatly, Ripple, and Elmhurst continually refine plant milk extraction, cutting water and energy use to produce clean label products free of artificial additives. 4. Milk bars. From street monuments to upscale chains, beyond bottled milks, a vibrant milk cafe culture has blossomed. Taiwanese bubble tea shops, tapioca pearls, jellies, and puddings blend with black or green tea and fresh milk to spark a global boba craze across Southeast Asia, the US, and Europe. Coffee milk cafes. Vietnam's Fin coffee with condensed milk, French cafe au lait, Italian lattes, Australian flat whites, and cappuccinos, and cold brews with fresh milk star on every corner. Smoothie and juice bars. Chains like Jamba Juice and Pressed Juicery use plant milks or yogurt with fresh fruits, greens, and superfood powders. Matcha, spirulina, to craft nutrient-loaded blends. Modern milk bars often feature open-plan layouts, selfie walls, and communal tables, creating lively social hubs. 5. Breakthrough milk technologies, UHT, and precision fermented proteins. Ultra-high temperature, UHT, processing keeps milk shelf stable without refrigeration. UHT milk and reconstituted milk powders become vital supplies for remote regions lacking electricity. Precision fermentation is now on the horizon, using microbial cultures to recreate cow milk proteins, whey, that are identical in amino profile but entirely vegan. This technology promises massive reductions in methane emissions and pasture land use. 6. The future of milks, culture and care combined. As the world confronts food crises and personalized nutrition demands, milk's animal or plant remain indispensable. Supply chains are shifting to full transparency with QR codes tracing every drop from pasture, soybean field, or oat mill to your glass. Soon, you may 3D print a customized milk beverage tailored to your taste and nutrient needs, guided by AI algorithms that factor in your genetic profile and gut microbiome. Native grains, nuts, and local botanicals will blend into drinks bursting with nutrients, minimal carbon footprint, and perfect for each individual. Amid this relentless innovation, each glass of milk, whether the first raw goat's milk from Wild Hills or a chilled almond latte, stays a symbol of kindness and sharing. Nourishing bodies, uniting communities, and conveying love in every wholesome sip. In the hectic pace of modern life, our quest to drink for health now extends far beyond milks to an endless variety of functional beverages, from cold-pressed juices and herbal teas to live culture kombucha, electrolyte drinks, and concentrated botanical extracts. This journey, which began with animal milks and has branched into the plant-based realm, invites us into a world where every sip is a symphony of science, tradition, and ceaseless innovation. Cold-pressed juices. At the leading edge are cold-pressed juices. Fruits and vegetables, carrots, green apples, celery, beets, gently pressed to preserve their enzymes, vitamins, and minerals. Branded by health-conscious millennials as liquid longevity, glowing green and ruby juices line storefronts from green detox blends to beetroot glow, each shimmering glass eagerly hunted down by devoted fans. Kombucha. Next comes kombucha, tea fermented with a SCOBY, symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, into a lightly acidic, effervescent probiotic tonic. Originating in the Far East and once issued to Russian naval medics during World War I for hydration, kombucha arrived in the U.S. in the 1990s as a must-have for yoga, Pilates, and creative office communities, sold in rustic craft paper bottles labeled raw and organic. Electrolyte drinks. Electrolyte beverages, once the purview of elite athletes, now feature in everyday life. Fortified with sodium, potassium, and magnesium, often sweetened with coconut sugar or honey. These liquids rapidly replenish fluids and balance electrolytes after hangovers, stressful days, or simply a restless night's sleep. Herbal teas and tisanes. We cannot ignore herbal teas. Artichoke tea for liver detox. Chamomile for relaxation. Ginger tea for digestive comfort. Matcha green tea powder, rich in catechins. While Asians cherish oolong and pu'er teas, Europeans savor tisane's blends of leaves, flowers, and peels, such as South African rooibos, Bulgarian rose tea, and Vietnamese jasmine tea, each sweetened with wild honey for enhanced flavor and potency. In Saigon, Hanoi, and Bangkok, intimate tea salons serve porcelain tea sets and invite guests to sip mindfully, cultivating breath awareness with each infusion. Collagen and protein drinks. In the functional beverage arena, collagen drinks peptides extracted from fish skins, chicken, or bovine sources, combined with vitamin C and hyaluronic acid, are idolized by Korean beauty gurus and global Instagram influencers for dewy skin and strong nails. Alongside them, protein shakes, whey, or plant-based blended with bananas and peanut butter have become go-to breakfast smoothies rich in essential amino acids. Pre-workout and post-workout mixes with creatine, BCAAs, caffeine, and betaine are now fixtures in gyms citywide. Adaptogen tonics and mocktails. Particularly noteworthy are adaptogen drinks. Ayurvedic herbs like ashwagandha, rhodiola, and cordyceps, hailed as secrets of the wise, helping the body resist stress, enhance energy, and bolster immunity. Healthy mocktail bars pair kombucha or tonic water with curcumin, glutathione, and reishi extracts, crafting complex, non-alcoholic concoctions that support liver, kidney, and nervous system health. Smart hydration technology. Technology has revolutionized our approach to hydration. Apps recommend beverages based on DNA or gut microbiome profiles. Smart bottles track hydration habits and prompt hourly sips. Water dispensers tailor pH and mineral content, quantifying and optimizing every gulp. Modern cafes and juice bars often feature mini labs where baristas are scientists ready to answer, "Why does this matcha differ from that one?" Or, "How do probiotics work in kombucha?" Whether you choose a vibrant cold-pressed juice, a silky matcha latte, or a crystal-clear electrolyte drink, all roads lead back to one purpose: continuing humanity's age-old tradition of drinking to live well, from the first bone broth by the primitive campfire to today's cool probiotic brews. No matter how urbanized or technological our world becomes, a healthful sip remains a symbol of listening to our bodies, honoring nature, and forging community through the simple act of shared, refreshing beverages. As the world has grown accustomed to cold-pressed juices, kombuchas, and adaptogen tonics, the next wave in the drink for health journey returns to the rich heritage of traditional ferments elevated by today's nutritional mindfulness. It begins with kefir, the milk-fermented elixir of the Caucasus Highlands. Kefir grains, a SCOBY in granular form, turn goat's or cow's milk into a creamy, tangy beverage teeming with hundreds of probiotic strains. In the 2000s, kefir spread across North America and Europe, bottled in vanilla, wildberry, and even chocolate flavors, becoming a staple probiotic drink for the urban health conscious. Alongside it, Water kefir made by fermenting coconut or fruit water with kefir grains brings lactic cultures to vegans and the lactose intolerant. While kefir gained popularity, ayran and lassi yogurt-based beverages from the Middle East and South Asia also evolved impressively. Originally, ayran was simply salted, diluted yogurt cooling and hydrating. But today, you'll find mint cucumber spiced ayran smoothies and Nanjing-style spiced versions. Classic mango lassi now comes infused with soapberry, matcha powder, and chia seeds, delivering an East meets West flavor trance. But the ferment story doesn't end with milk. Kvass, Russia's traditional rye bread ferment, has been reinvented by modern microbreweries as a kombucha kvass hybrid, boasting toasted bread notes and gentle vinegar tang, earning its place alongside New York's hip cold brew coffees. Coffee alternatives are also booming. Chicory coffee, made from wild artichoke roots. Mushroom coffee, blended with lion's mane, chaga, or reishi powders. Nootropic shots combining alpha GPC, L-theanine, and slow-release caffeine for sustained focus. Even major chains like Starbucks and Costa Coffee have added mushroom lattes and turmeric mushroom blends to cater to the wellness crowd. We cannot overlook detox infusions, waters steeped with cucumber, lemon, mint, and ginger, or functional waters fortified with BCAAs, collagen peptides, B vitamin complexes, and adaptogen extracts. In Europe, home water filtration systems now not only remove impurities, but also inject optimally balanced minerals and electrolytes, delivering smart water with ideal pH and bone-supporting silica. Finally, as city lights glow, dry bars have emerged, offering 100% healthy mocktails, blends of kombucha, organic tonic water, rose extract, watermelon, and chia seeds, balancing bittersweet sour flavors while replenishing electrolytes and probiotics. Nearby, CBD-infused teas, adaptogen brews, and non-alcoholic gin and tonics, substituting alcohol with herbal extracts, create fully relaxing spaces without the risks of tipsiness. In this ever-evolving beverage universe, from kefir to kombucha, mushroom lattes to detox infusions, zero-proof mocktails to smart waters, each sip testifies to our enduring quest for health. It bridges the silent ferments of the past with a future of ingenious, science-fueled nourishment, turning every glass into a cultural and nutritional journey across borders and centuries. Chapter 9: The Origins of Street Food. From the very first open-air markets along river valleys, street vendors heralded the opening notes of the street food symphony. In ancient Mesopotamia, farmers laid bamboo mats along the Euphrates and sold freshly baked flatbreads hand-formed from wheat flour harvested that morning. Egyptian women tied coarse cloth sacks filled with green pea porridge, offering steaming bowls of soup to passers-by. Roman merchants carried amphorae of garum and ancient fish sauce and hawked sweet raisin pastries. In East Asia, beneath suspension bridges spanning the Yangtze, stallholders in thatched huts displayed trays of steamed buns, roasted pork sandwiches, and bowls of fragrant fermented soy porridge for boatmen and laborers. Medieval Europe's roadside markets were equally bustling. Italian vendors pushed carts of thin chickpea farinata across Florence's piazzas. Parisians flipped crepes on street corners, smearing them with jam before folding into half-moons. In London, crowds spilling from Westminster Abbey found black pea mush and smoked sausages sold from horse-drawn stalls. Weekly fairs by the cathedral or fish markets at the docks doubled as folk restaurants, where diners could snag a boneless grilled fish, dusted with salt, and eat it on the spot. 19th century urbanization turned sidewalks into grand stages. In New York, hot dog stands clustered around Madison Square Garden fed factory workers. Paris saw mobile iron bistros offering pâté and wine served in tin cups. Bangkok's horse-drawn noodle carts trailed behind carriages, while 1920s Hanoi's pho, bun rio, and bun cha stalls slipped deep into alleyways. Wherever smoke billowed, people gathered. Street food has always been a laboratory for innovation. In the early 20th century, Mexico City's first taco trucks grilled corn tortillas with spiced meats and fiery salsas. India's chaiwala carts brewed spiced black tea with milk, sometimes flavored with cardamom or pepper. Greek gyro stands rotated spit-roasted lamb nestled in pita, topped with yogurt lentil sauces. Each vendor condensed a nation's culinary heritage, splicing spices and techniques passed down through generations. With advances in communications, street food images spread via newspapers, then television, and finally the internet. Taipei's night markets now brim with Malaysian laksa, Korean barbecue skewers, and Taiwanese bubble teas. Istanbul streets lure tourists with sesame-coated simit rings. Post-1975, Saigon exploded with food scooters motorbikes serving crispy banseo, mini pancake cups, and broken rice plates. Street food has become a tourism draw, with diners waiting hours for a perfect Lang Son-style meat skewer, an authentic bowl of Hanoi pho, or a Saigon skillet sandwich loaded with pâté, sausage, and herbs. In our 24/7 world, street food remains a humble gathering place. Workers grabbing breakfast before their shift, students grabbing a quick lunch, families perched on low plastic stools for an affordable dinner, travelers flocking to crowds for local flavors. Canvas tents, stainless steel carts, and repurposed shipping containers billow smoke from hot coals, indelible marks of folk culinary culture. Amid that swirling street food smoke, the history of food is rewritten daily. A five-star chef mounting a smoked salmon sandwich on the corner, or a solar-powered food truck startup serving organic salads. In every innovation, we see that street food is forever the wellspring of creativity, connecting past, present, and future in the global culinary story. Hoi Chat GPT. From the very first markets along river valleys, street vendors heralded the opening notes of the street food symphony. Ancient Mesopotamian farmers laid bamboo mats beside the Euphrates to sell steaming flatbreads, hand-stretched from wheat harvested at dawn. Egyptian women unfurled coarse cloth sacks of green pea porridge, offering hot bowls that billowed fragrant steam. Roman merchants carried amphorae of garum, the ancient fish sauce, and hawked sweet raisin pastries. In East Asia, beneath the suspension bridges spanning the Yangtze, thatched hut stalls displayed trays of steamed buns, roasted pork sandwiches, and bowls of fragrant soy porridge for river laborers. Medieval Europe's roadside markets were just as lively. Italian vendors wheeled crispy chickpea farinata through Florence's piazzas. Parisians flipped crepes on street corners, smearing them with jam and folding them into half-moons. In London, crowds spilling from Westminster Abbey found horse-drawn carts selling mushy peas and smoked sausages. Weekly fairs by the great cathedrals or docksides were folk restaurants where you might grab a boneless grilled fish, salted to taste, and eat it on the spot. 19th century urbanization turned sidewalks into grand stages. In New York, hot dog carts clustered around Madison Square Garden to feed factory workers. Paris saw mobile iron bistros offering pâté and wine in tin goblets. Bangkok's horse-drawn noodle carts followed the procession of carriages, while 1920s Hanoi's pho, bun rio, and bun cha stalls crept into the narrowest alleys wherever smoke curled, people gathered. Street food has always been a laboratory of innovation. In early 20th century Mexico City, taco trucks grilled corn tortillas with spiced meats and fiery salsas. In India, chaiwalas brewed spiced black tea with milk, flavored with cardamom or pepper. Greek gyro carts spun spit-roasted lamb in pita, drizzled with yogurt lentil sauce. Each vendor condensed a culture's culinary heritage passing down spices and techniques through generations. With mass media's rise, street food images spread via newspapers, then television, and finally, the internet. Taipei's night markets now brim with Malaysian laksa, Korean barbecue skewers, and Taiwanese bubble tea. Istanbul's streets entice with sesame-crusted simit rings. Post-1975 Saigon exploded with food scooters, motorbikes serving crispy bonseo, mini pancake cups, and broken rice plates. Street food became a tourism magnet, with lines forming for perfect Lang Sun-style meat skewers, authentic Hanoi pho, or Saigon skillet sandwiches, overflowing with pâté, sausage, and herbs. In our 24/7 world, street food remains a democratizing meeting place. Workers grabbing breakfast before their shift, students on quick lunches, families perched on tiny plastic stools over affordable dinners, travelers chasing the crowds for local flavors. Canvas tents, stainless steel carts, and repurposed shipping containers still send up smoke from charcoal grills, a living testament to folk gastronomic culture. Amid that swirling street food tableau, the history of food is rewritten daily. A Michelin-trained chef rolling out a smoked salmon banh mi on a side street, or a solar-powered pop-up truck serving organic salads. Every twist and reinvention shows that street food will forever be our creative wellspring, connecting past, present, and future in the global culinary story. As digital technology and the sharing economy seep into every alley, street food enters a new, promising era. Stainless steel carts, insulated coolers, and traditional charcoal grills have been digitized into ghost kitchens, shared cooking spaces where dozens of brands pool kitchen staff and delivery teams. Diners no longer jostle on sidewalks. They simply open an app, choose their dish, from Saigon grilled pork banh mi to Baja California tacos, and track their order in the clear from kitchen to doorstep. Along major boulevards, autonomous delivery robots navigate sidewalks, climb curbs, and ring doorbells. Drones drop meals onto apartment balconies, making rooftop guerrilla lunches easier than ever. In Europe, customers subscribe to weekly street food boxes, 5 dishes from 5 different cities, each accompanied by a QR code linking to the dish's cultural story and spice secrets. Dining spaces have evolved too. Food, halls, communal venues hosting carts, takeaway counters, and shared seating are now optimized with air filtration systems, time-shifting LED lighting, and local electronic hybrid soundscapes, keeping the street food vibe alive day and night. You might sit beside a Greek gyro stall and turn to a Karachi grill cart all within a few hundred square meters. Alongside technology runs a sustainability trend. Paper packaging, bamboo cups, wooden chopsticks, and canvas bags have become standard. Organic waste is collected and returned to kitchens for composting or livestock feed. In Singapore's Market 5.0, every stall must use fully traceable ingredients from farm to table, and at least 30% of its menu must be vegan. In this digital realm, hyper-personalization reigns. Interactive screens on carts let diners rate dishes and suggest new ones based on their order history. AI analyzes meal photos and adjusts spice levels to individual tastes. Loyalty points accrue the moment you nibble a fried dough stick in Hanoi or slurp standing ramen in Tokyo. Yet, however much the world changes, the allure of the street kitchen lies in its authenticity and warmth. The morning cry of rare, medium, well-done pho still echoes at dawn. Charcoal smoke still drifts on the breeze, and the flavors of spice and sweet, salty, and sour spread through every skewer, every pork chop rice plate, every bowl of grilled pork noodles. In every corner, from New Delhi, Jakarta, and Manila to Madrid, Lisbon, and Rio de Janeiro, street food remains the creative pulse, the place where people meet, share, and continue writing the endless story of global food culture.